I'm talking with Early Start's Elizabeth Aylward, and we're going to be talking about the Early Start Denver model. So, Liz, could you tell us about the Early Start Denver model? Could you describe it for me and tell me all about it?
Certainly, the Early Start Denver model is an evidence-based model that was developed at the University of California, Davis Mind Institute by Professor Sally Rogers and Geraldine Dawson. We approached Sally and Geraldine back in 2009 to train a team in Australia in the Early Start Denver model because we could see that there was a lovely correlation between the play-based, routine-based nature of the model and what we were doing in our services here in Australia. So since then, we have trained many people around Australia, and I've gone on to become a certified trainer as well. It's a naturalistic behavioural developmental model that can be applied across multiple settings, including the traditional therapy clinic setting, in the home, helping parents to use ESDM principles in everyday routines and moments in their day. It can be applied in group settings, specialist group settings, and it can also be applied in mainstream group settings. And we've done many studies on each of those applications here in Australia.
So in talking about the model, the application of this model is predominantly for children with autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so can you describe why it's a great model working with children with autism?
Okay, so the essence behind the model is to bring the child with autism out of their, back into the social loop at every opportunity. Because the child with autism starts to drift out of that social loop at around 6 months of age.
So what does the social loop mean?
The social loop, where the child is socially engaged with others, like they typically develop in peers. And it's in that context that the typically developing child does most of their learning, by paying attention to other people, to their faces, their voices, their actions, their gestures, and observing and imitating those, either mentally or acting them out, and that's where the bulk of their learning occurs. But for the child with ASD, they start at around 6 months of age, they start to babble less, they start to pay less and less attention to the people around them, and they're actually gradually falling out of that social loop. So they're missing out on all of those valuable learning opportunities in every moment of their day that their typically developing peer is getting, and that has a cascading effect on their overall development. So at the heart of the ESDM is empirical evidence behind the social learning, the learning communication skills, learning imitation skills, learning play skills, cognition, self-help skills, joint attention, crossing all of the developmental domains. But essentially, we are, in whatever we're doing, whether it's reading a book or doing a puzzle or playing outdoors, the focus is to get that lovely alternating attention between the activity and the child's attention to our face and our voice and our actions.
So in thinking about that, so just to take it a step back, talked about the social loop, that children's learning is social and built on relationships as well, those relationships that you're talking about. If you're saying at 6 months the child's falling out of the social loop, then what does that actually look like? I hear what it does in terms of children's learning, but what's the experience of the child in this, and also how can it be, I suppose, seen from an external point of view?
Okay, it can be observed, more likely than not by the child's mother, and certainly by a trained eye, because the child starts focusing less on the people around them and more on objects and unusual details or patterns in their environments. They start smiling less, they start babbling less, they start making less eye contact, they start sharing less social smiles, and then all of that has the cascading impact on their development, so they start to fall behind in their developmental milestones.
And do we understand what that feels like for a child to be in that? I don't know, it's just a question really. If we don't, that's fine, but I'm just wondering if we understand what that feels like.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It seems that a lot of the causes behind autism, I mean, we know it's genetically predisposed and we know that genes set the stage for learning, but it's actually the environment that shapes the circuitry of the child's brain. So if the child is paying less attention to people and the social and communication aspects of life and more attention to objects and parts of objects and details in the environment, then that child's life is quite isolating, but also it's affecting their interaction with their own environment. And it's that interplay between the child's interaction with the environment that also has an impact on their development.
Yeah. So can you tell me about the principles of the Early Start Denver model? What are the guiding principles?
Okay, the Early Start Denver model is made up of two major components. One component is the Early Start Denver model curriculum checklist, which is a 480-item assessment tool that spans 0 to 48 months of developmental age.
480 items, yeah.
It covers all developmental domains, so a child is assessed against that assessment tool on entry to any of the programs, and that enables us to know exactly where to start teaching that child. It identifies their skills and the areas that need extra work. From that assessment, we develop a very comprehensive program for the child with 24 to 36 objectives that span a quarter to 10-week quarter. And then each of those objectives is carefully broken down into teaching steps, which very, very carefully scaffold the child's development from the immature version of a behavioural skill to the more mature version of that behavioural skill over that 10 to 12-week period. Data is collected against those objectives daily, so it's highly accountable, which adds to the rigour, which is obviously added to the research behind this model. The other component of the model are the teaching principles, and the teaching principles are used to implement the child's program and objectives within joint activity routines. And the joint activity routine is a very carefully constructed routine as well, 4 parts with a setup phase, a theme, elaboration where we add variations to the play because we're always needing to teach children with ASD more flexibility across play materials, and we're always needing to optimise their motivation as well, and then a close down and pack away. There are choices, giving child choices pervades every activity that we do with a child, and helping the child to make those choices so that we're capturing their motivation from the outset of an activity. But then it's not so much a child-led model as a dyadic model. It's about achieving that lovely dyadic balance, like an old-fashioned pair of scales where there's lead and follow and lead, and the adult is having as many turns as the child is having, and there's sharing of gaze and sharing of smiles and sharing of materials and sharing of turns. And the child very quickly learns through these processes that we as the adult are actually fun play partners and we're worth attending to. And it doesn't take very long at all for them to learn that.
So you, as one of only 4 trainers in Australia, and you've worked with parents and with educators in early childhood settings, you must have a lot of stories of success. So what's one that really, sits in your mind that you could share?
Yes, I have. Yes, there are many, many, many stories, but one very special story that just springs straight into my mind is a child whom I met at 18 months of age. with all of the classical symptoms of autism. He was not making eye contact, he had no vocalizations, he wasn't sharing social smiles or joint attention, he wasn't particularly interested in people, and his parents both asked if they could come to an advanced ESDM workshop. One of the parents did not have the qualifications that met the criterion for the workshop, so I had to seek permission for this to happen, and it was granted to me on the grounds that yes, that's fine as long as they offer up their child as the child we work with in the workshop. So we worked with this little child in the workshop across the 4 days back then, and he was very, very low on level 1 in the curriculum checklist, which meant that he was, while he was 18 months old, he was functioning at a 6 to 9 month developmentally. And both of the parents did the workshop. The mother had the qualifications to allow her to go through the whole certification process. And then they also sent another psychologist who they were employing as a sort of play therapist in the home to the next workshop. So this child was getting a triangulated approach, and also the staff in the preschool where this child went were trained as well to use the principles of the model. So this child was getting ESDM from all directions in his life, in every moment, every routine, in the most naturalistic way. And within another 18 months, this child had completed level 4, 48 months on the curriculum checklist, is now very successfully participating in a mainstream school, a model student, teachers saying that they wish every child was like this child in their class, doing really well academically and socially. That's a huge turnaround for that whole family.
Yeah, so it's about something that has had an impact on family, on the educators around them, and most importantly for that child as well. So in sort of thinking about ESDM, I've heard you talk about this term play partner. What does that actually mean?
Okay, so when we meet a child for the first time, after we've completed the assessment and met with the family and established goals together, then our only focus in those first few sessions with the child is just to become their play partner, and for the child to learn that we as an adult are a fun play partner. And we do that in a very gentle, coming alongside sort of approach. We're not placing any demands on the child. We're not even jumping in and starting teaching. We're not even jumping in and taking a turn, let alone touching their materials, until we've established ourselves as a play partner. So we sit alongside, we comment on what they're doing with lots of affect and enthusiasm, the materials they're using, the actions that they're making. When they accept our presence at that level, then we can start to show that we're a helpful play partner, and positioning things in containers that they are wanting to use and need to use in their play, but they need our help to open them. So they quickly learn through those simple strategies that we're also a helping play partner. And then we can move into being a more interactive play partner and working towards that lovely dyadic, balanced, coordinated play relationship with the child, and have fun. And the science behind fun is that when a child's having fun, they're learning at a faster rate and they're more likely to remember what they've learned. And the child having fun is also keeping the child's motivation optimized, and they just want to be spending time with us. And then of course it's about generalizing that motivation to wanting to spend time with their peers and carefully scaffolding that situation.
So what do you think would perhaps encourage people, what would be what they're working in their working situation or in home situation that would encourage them to reach out perhaps to Early Start and to you to receive some training? What would it be that they would be experiencing that they might reach out and ask those for that?
Well, including a child with autism spectrum disorder in a service, particularly in a mainstream service group setting, is challenging for the child, and it's equally challenging for the educators. They do not have the specialist training or skills to be working with this child in a way that they can engage the child to a high level of participation in the program, in a way that they can prevent behaviours from occurring or managing those behaviours when they do occur. So they would be reaching out through the challenges that they're experiencing, and through their desire. You know, if they're including these children, then they have a strong desire to make this work and to help the child in the best way that they can. So they would be reaching out to us for both of those reasons. In the home, just getting through the day, getting through a meal time, getting your child in and out of a car, taking your child out into public, to a park or to a shopping centre. They're all enormous challenges for a parent who has not learned those specialist skills again in how to engage their child and how to have fun with their child and just how to play with their child, and how any moment in a day from bath time to meal time can actually be turned into therapy. It doesn't have to be an add-on therapy where the parent, has to sit down at a desk and a chair and child with them. No, it can be built into every single moment of their day.
So just to finish up, what's your kind of drive and inspiration in terms of delivering this model?
My drive and inspiration is probably the same drive and inspiration I have throughout my whole career, and it's always to help people to be the very best they can be, and to facilitate their professional growth so that whatever we can do, they can do much better. That's been my overriding goal and passion for a very long time, and to be able to share this specialist information to enable people to achieve the goals that they would already have in their home, in their service, in their clinic, and enhance their existing practice and take the stress out of their daily life is just a wonderful gift to be able to share.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you, Leanne.